Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership in Dealership podcast, where we strive to share the latest and greatest trends shaping the automotive industry with today's thought leaders. I'm your host, Don Richards-Boeff, and I'm excited, and I think you will be as well, to welcome our next guest, Ed Roberts, COO of Bozard Ford Lincoln in St. Augustine, Florida. Ed, good to see you. How are you doing today?
Excellent, Don. Glad to be here, and thanks for having me on the show.
Excellent. Well, we say leadership in the dealership is the title of this podcast, and no one better than Ed Roberts to talk to you about leadership in the dealership. You've got a great background. I'm excited to get to our conversation today. You and I had a chance to catch up before the podcast, and you shared your background, views on leadership, how you use those lessons to create a great customer experience at Bozard, and ultimately write your recent book, Mile One. Can you share your story with our audience? What led you to automotive, Bozard, and ultimately your passion for leadership?
Well, I come from very humble beginnings, and I was very fortunate to stumble into a job fair and have an opportunity to start at a dealership. And then when I went to start that dealership, I was told no, I didn't have a place there. And when I say I started with humble beginnings, I was homeless at that time, sleeping in the car and still going to high school and trying to make things happen. And so I looked like a hoodlum, sound like a hoodlum, smelled like a hoodlum. And they judged a book by its cover and said, there's no place for you here. But I don't hear no a lot of times. I hear not yet. And so I left there and landed at another place. I said, well, if that car dealer give me a chance, maybe another one will. And if I had that opportunity at that car dealer, and they decided no at the end, then maybe another one would, and that's what I left and went to another. And they gave me a chance, and at that point, it's just about the attitude and effort that you can bring out. I put in everything I could, every ounce of energy I had into it to try to make them believe in me, so to speak, and to say, hey, yeah, it was worth giving this guy a chance. And when you bring attitude and effort every single day, there is no limit. We talk about sky's the limit. Our mind is our only limit. So when you bring the right attitude and effort, there is no limit. You just got to keep your foot on the gas and keep going.
Yeah. You said no means not yet to you. How did adversity shape being able to take what some of us would maybe feel as rejection, and maybe some people treat it that way, and move on to the next thing? How did you take adversity and turn it into not yet? And sounds like not yet actually means yes if you're Ed Roberts and persistent.
Well, it's sheer determination to not live the life that I grew up in. And my family still lives a lot of that because they've chose that path. And that's the only thing you know is what you see, what you grow up in, what's across the street, what's next to you. It's all the same. And then when you realize that there is a different life out there, it's not accepting to settle. So it was sheer determination to, hey, they are no different than I am. I can be one of them, and I'm going to find a way to go do it.
Yeah, awesome. You said you worked your way from different dealerships. You've also had a couple of different positions within dealerships, or at least focus. You started on the service side, is that right?
I did. So I was a tech apprentice.
And I think the number of times I've seen you on podcasts, it's Ed knows fixed ops, but you're also COO today. How did starting off in service shape what you do at Bozard now, and how you interact with everyone from the dealership, whether it's your customers, whether it's new employees? How did service lead you to service leadership?
I think it has a lot to do with, and I've never been asked quite that question, but I will give you what I think the right version of it is. I think it's really comes from where I started, and it was the determination to look at life through a different lens and say that there's something different out there. Mm-hmm. And in every position I've held so far, whether it be in service and sales and variable with manufacturers, I try to look at it from the end user's lens. So when I was growing up, I was trying to look at it through what does other people see us as, and what is that? And so looking at it through, and in service, if we look at it through a customer's lens, it's easy to identify and remove the friction. Yeah. And when you identify and remove the friction, then you're creating an experience that customers like to be a part of, because they don't like to experience friction. But a lot of times we create processes that are convenient for us inside the business, and that process does make that convenient for us, but it creates friction for our end user or our customer. And when we create that friction for them, that erodes that experience. And when it erodes the experience, then they don't want to come back. We've ensured that we gave them all the reasons why not to come back. And to create that loyalty, we have to create the experience that makes them want more. And looking at it from their lens, I think it makes it a lot easier to do that.
And it sounds like you've done that at Bozard. For those in our audience who aren't familiar with Bozard Ford, can you tell us a little bit about where you are today versus where you started? I think you said 10, 12 years ago you started at Bozard, joining the team when they were still relatively small. You're large today. Can you give us that story of the beginning to where you are at the moment?
So we are in a small town. We are south of Jacksonville. Jacksonville is the closest thing to Metro to us, and it's not Metro by any means, but it's closer to Metro than St. Augustine.
St. Augustine.
The city proper here has a population of 15,000 people. And so when I started here, September of 2012, the size of the store was very fitting for the town that we was in. Had 43 employees. I made up the 43rd employee, and I came in as a fixed operations director. They was having some trouble in fixed ops with warranty audits and various different things. Just had some process things that needed to be cleaned up. But ultimately, that's what gave me the opportunity to be able to come into the store. And but fast forward, cleaning those things up, creating an experience for our customers. We're still a town that doesn't have a whole lot more than 15,000 people in it.
Yeah.
But as of yesterday, we hired our 401st employee, and we went from selling 50 cars a month back then to we'll sell 1,000 cars this month. We write nearly 500 repair orders a day, and back then we wrote about 1,000 repair orders a month. So dramatic change, and we're not done. Really, every day we come in here, we're just getting started, and that's what makes it fun.
That's extraordinary growth. The same dealership, you just rattled off numbers, right? From you're talking 50 to 1,000 now. That oftentimes is happening through acquisition, and you're just doing it through sleepy little beach towns, St. Augustine, Florida. So that would be what I would call punching above your weight, just a little bit. How's the month going? How's the year going? Let's provide context, right? A lot of times people are taking temperature checks. Are you still bullish on whether it's current economy, local market? You are running one of the most successful Ford Lincoln points in the nation. What are you thinking about where we are right now and the rest of the year as far as what that means for Bozard?
Well, at the end of every year, we set our priorities for the following year, and those priorities are huge. We have big goals. We don't want to, because good is truly the enemy of great. And if we want to get better, we have to push ourselves. We have to challenge ourselves. We have to challenge ourselves ongoingly to do what we'd never done before. And then when we create those priorities, now we assign them to everybody. And everybody has their priorities that they need to work on, and that becomes their focus. And then we meet every other month to update those priorities and change them accordingly. Some of those priorities we're outrunning in 2024. Some of them we're a little bit behind on. But even the ones that we're behind on, we're so far ahead of what others would kind of plan themselves to be, we're still winning. And it's okay for us not to hit all of our priorities because they were so aggressive, as long as we're making progress and we're removing the things that prevent us from getting where we want to be. So we're ahead in a lot of areas. I wanted to have 40 mobile trucks on the road by now. I'm not quite there. I'm almost 30. So we're and we started the year with 11. So that's a big old giant jump. But I wanted a bigger jump by now. Right. But I can't complain about it. So the year is shaping up well. And yes, there is different challenges than there was last year. We got the interest rates. We got various different things. But there's always opportunity in those things. We can't focus on what we can't control, and that's what we preach to our team a lot. We can't control the interest rates. There's nothing we can do to sit here and go to change those. Let's work with what we do have. Let's focus on the things that we can control. And when we do those things, the other places are focusing on the things they can't control, and it allows us to continue to gain market share over and over and over again.
Yeah. I assume you're pulling from Jacksonville, other areas. Just curious, as far as market size, how you go from 50 to 1,000 sales? How far are you pulling? How big is the market for Bozard, as far as where you're pulling your normal customers from?
Well, for one, let's talk about retaining what those are. And
Yeah.
the average dealer across the country, regardless of brand, retains about 30% of their customers after their sale to do
Right.
their service business. And that means 70% of their business goes elsewhere.
Right.
And so automatically there's 70% available to be captured that you wasn't really getting because customers had insured reasons why they don't need to do business with you. Fortunately for us, we retain about 80% of our customers, and 20% go elsewhere. So even the ones that we're pumping, the pump out ones that we're pumping out into Jacksonville and other places, they're still coming here for service. And what it tells us, and that's our true measurement, is are we meeting customers on their level? Are we taking care of them at how they want to be taken care of? That creates the loyalty. And when we do that, then it doesn't matter the size because, yes, we're in a town of 15,000, but I'm also in a county where Lincoln is the #1 luxury nameplate. And I know I'm the only county in Florida that it's that way, and I'm probably the only county in the country that it's that way.
Yeah.
So we get more of our unfair share. I'm certain that I'm dancing in more than the 14% market share that Ford owns in our market area, and it's by meeting customers on their terms. And then how far out do we reach? We do send vehicles all over the country because obviously the internet has created that opportunity where they can see what you have, and being a large store, we have more inventory than most, and those things, so that we do pump some out. But as a rule, I would say our market area is about 30 miles around us. And 30 miles is still huge
Yep.
for any dealer to be able to pull that far around. And when you can pull a 30-mile circle, that's 30 miles north, 30 miles south, that's a 60-mile stretch.
Yeah, you got a big area. I think one of your secret weapons, maybe it's not so secret if your competition's paying attention or anybody's seen one of your podcasts, but one of your secret weapons to flipping 30-70 to 80-20, which is phenomenal. I think a lot of people are going to have to go rewind that and make sure they heard it correctly. Your secret weapon is part of that mobile service strategy that you talked about, where you had 10, 11 vehicles at the beginning of the year, 40 something now, and you're looking to grow that even bigger. Be very aggressive in that. That feels like maybe a secret, not so secret weapon to your success. Can you tell us more about that and why you think that is part of your customer retention strategy?
Mobile service is really the way we should have been doing business 30 years ago. Customers have told us forever that they don't want to come in. They don't want to service a vehicle. They service a vehicle out of reaction. They plan their life, and then they have to fit service into it. So we plan our vacation and realize, oh man, the car's due for service, and take it in. It's never convenient. And so anytime you come in, it's just like we may go to the dentist routinely because we need to, but when we get that toothache that just pops up, it's not convenient for us to go figure it out. Who can I go see? Where can I go?
Right.
And it's the same thing with vehicle service. And so when we can show up to a customer's doorstep and they don't even have to change any part of their schedule, their agenda, whatever they have going on, because we show up, we take care of things, and it doesn't disrupt their day. But then take that further. People always had a tough time trusting stores, trusting dealers, trusting any service center. Sears really put that out there for us 30, 40 years ago. And we can say that picture is worth 1,000 words, and yes, pictures help when you show a customer a picture of what the car is and what it is. Then videos takes that even further. Well, showing is the best. And when you pull a dirty cabin air filter out of somebody's vehicle and show it to them while they're standing there, there's no question of where that came from. There's no question of, is that really my filter? Did they just plant that in there or whatever else? And so it builds those layers of trust. And when you continue to work on those layers of trust, then I don't necessarily have to go out and conquest new customers. If I do conquest, I'm building that market share. So it builds layers of trust. It meets customers on their terms. I mean, think about it. You've probably been on Amazon today. If not, you've been on there this week looking for something.
Right.
And you could get in your car and drive somewhere and get it right now. or you can wait a couple hours. Maybe it's a couple hours depending on where you're at, or maybe it's tomorrow, and get it from Amazon. But they've taken all of the friction out of it. And if you do need to return something, you click a couple things, you take it back to their return center, and they say thank you. And there's no, well, why did you have to return it? Does it not work? Well, they don't build in the friction. And that's all we're trying to do is bring vehicle service to your doorstep and remove as much friction as possible.
It seems like it's an opportunity as well, right? You think about service bay utilization. You come in, you've got a busy dealership. Not to say that going to the dealership is transactional, but you're sending someone out to my house on my terms, and that's much more of a one-on-one relationship. How much of the experience of one-on-one is part of your retention strategy, and then maybe even generational, right? So we talk about transactions, but it's a chance to have me come back and not only buy another car the next time I need one, but maybe buy 2 or 3 cars because I've got my son or my daughter or whomever also in the Bozard mix. How much of service is really oriented towards building that long-term relationship?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because that's another element that mobile really builds on. Is let's say the husband has an F-150 and the wife has, and I don't want to pick on any certain brand, but let's grab one out of the sky.
Yeah.
Has a Passat,
Yeah.
and not that there's anything wrong with that vehicle, but we come there and service the husband's vehicle in the driveway, and they never have to go through that. And they have to take a day off of work to go in, get the vehicle service, wait in the lounge, question whether it needs this, that, or the other. And so the next time going forward, they'll ask them, do y'all offer mobile service? Well, they don't even know what that is. And then, so the next time going forward is, let me go see, we won't be top of mind. Let's go see what Bozard has. And now we own the driveway. And then another element to that is, as I said earlier, service is very reactionary. We react to when we need it, not plan for it. And so let's say we got a vacation planned, and we get loaded up or whatever else, and check engine light comes on, and then you call in and they can't get you in. And if we roll up and say, well, I can have one of my field specialists come out to you this afternoon, how's that work for you? And we come out, and even if we can't fix it in field, we can now tell them, hey, your vehicle's safe to drive, it's this, I'm going to go ahead and order one for you. Go ahead and go on vacation, do your deal. When you get back, I'll come put this on, or if I have to schedule to bring you in or whatever. Now, rather than letting that person sit there and call 5 places trying to figure out which one can get them in, we've now told them, we've taken all the elements away. It's safe to drive. There's nothing to worry about. Go enjoy yourself. And by the way, while you're gone, I'm going to go ahead and plan the repair when it comes back. And then when it comes back, it's a one-day repair. It comes in, it gets repaired, and it leaves, because we already know what's wrong with it and whatever else. And just taking those elements out, let's look at it from the other side, where check engine light comes on, customer brings it in, we don't have the part in stock, so now they got to rent a car to go on their trip. I keep the car for 3 days. They get back, they call, find out the car's ready, it's not ready yet. Now they're questioning, this car that I rented has been fine for me, should I go trade this thing in? And so again, it erodes that level of loyalty. And really, in the end, all check engine lights come on. It's just things happen with all of them. Every dealership out there has got a service department tied to it. It doesn't matter the brand, because there's things that happen to all of them. And when we can minimize those things and overcome those obstacles and make those obstacles truly just a bump in the road rather than a hurdle that they have to jump over, then that's what creates the loyalty that continues to compound and allows us to go from 50 to 100 to 200 to 500 to 700 to 800 to 1,000. And who knows where it keeps going, because we are truly getting started, getting started.
I don't know. Is there a ceiling for how much you can do at just one dealership? You're going to take on the entire state of Florida, maybe more. So awesome. So let's talk about Mile One, your book. Right? We're here to talk about leadership. What was, I don't think people are born saying, hey, I'm going to write a book. We do have authors out there, people who write for a living, but I'm going to say, was Ed waking up one morning and going, you know what, I'm ready to write my book? What was the spark for that? How did you know that this was the time to write Mile One?
Well, it goes back a bit, and I've kind of been pressured for probably 20, 25 years somewhere more than 20, less than 25,
Yeah.
to put your story down. People need to hear this because of where I started and being able to make some things happen. And so people say you need to write a book about your story because people can relate to that and it'll help them see that they can come out of that. And I thought, just like you said, I'm not an author. That's not who I am, and I want to embrace who I am. And finally, about 10 or 11 years ago, I started making notes. Well, if I write a book, I feel like this is important, and I feel like this is important. And over time, I go back and look at it, and I said, these are all elements of leadership. And truly, leadership is parenting, and parenting is leadership. We try to lead our kids down the right path. And there's a lot of elements that ties together there. And as I reflected back, as I'm making these notes, that's what it kept going back to. And I said, well, all right, at some point, I'll write a book. And didn't really have a timeline of when I was going to. And then I was talking to a friend of mine that is an author, and we was chatting about a few things or whatever else. And it just hit me. And I ended my conversation with him and hung up the phone, thought about it for a couple minutes, picked up the phone, called him back, and said, Clint, you've pushed me over the hump. I'm going to, and that's when I started. I started putting those thoughts together. I already had some of the thought starters, so that become the chapters, and then put it together. And I still haven't told the story. There's elements of it, but I hadn't told the story of my life, of where I've gotten here. So there's going to be at least one more that comes out, but I have a plan of writing 2 more right now.
Awesome. So Clint pushed you over the edge. I'm curious, as part of a spark and an inspiration, did you share the book with him as you were writing? At the end, did you get his feedback, or was he got you going and other people got you across the finish line?
So he is one of my early readers.
Okay.
He read it a couple times, and he also is one of the endorsers in the book as well.
Awesome.
But he was all about me putting it on paper. He says, Ed, you waited too long to do this. It's overdue. Let's get it done.
Too long is all right. Yeah, every day you have a new opportunity, I think, right? So let's get into leadership in the dealership. Some of the things that you feel are important, and you wrote the book in a very specific order. I noticed that as I was reading it, there were things that you were intentionally, I was like, gosh, why didn't we start with hiring, for example, right? Isn't that the most important thing, is who you're bringing into the dealership? And you took a pretty interesting approach in how you laid it out. It was actually, it felt as if you were speaking to leaders right now, saying, are you thinking this way? Are you being intentional? So what if we start kind of with that? What do you think the most important lesson for a leader is to start out with when you're talking about leadership in the dealership? And then we can maybe end with hiring, because again, I thought of it as the first thing, but maybe it's the end. So where would you start if you were having a conversation for a leader as to what they need to think about first?
Well, everyone's different, and so each chapter will hit different people at different levels. But let's go in a little bit of an order. A lot of times we get promoted into the position, especially in car dealers, and it happens in other businesses as well. But it's notorious in the car business where we're a good salesperson, so we get promoted to a sales manager, or we're good service advisors, so we get promoted to a service manager. And just because we're good at selling doesn't mean that we're good at managing. And so a lot of times we'll get promoted into those because we're the next man up, so somewhat. And then all of a sudden, now it's our job to get things done through people, but we don't know how to do that. So we continue to just pick up the elements of what we used to do because we was good at it, and we continue to do it for our people. And that makes us very, very, very busy. And it doesn't make us very effective, because what we should be doing is growing our people. So there's a chapter in there for I'd say that's really for new managers moving into that and the art of delegation, because those are the 2 toughest things to do, is kind of let go and be the coach rather than the player and the coach. Be the coach of the players, and that makes you a lot more effective. And then the learning that the art of delegation is developing that person. And so those are the 2 things for young managers to really make that shift from being the player to being the coach.
Right.
Because you can't do both effectively. And we all try to do both of them when we first move into that role. Well, I'll just show them. Mm-hmm. Well, we show them by doing it rather than showing it by helping them do it.
Right.
And then and going further, I wrote a chapter in there about coaching versus counseling. A lot of times we're counseling our people because we're looking for the things that they're doing wrong rather than coaching them to the job that we want them to do. And a good example of that, and I use the example in the book, is kind of like our kids learning how to ride a bike.
Right.
They're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall. They're going to crash. And we don't go over there and beat them on the butt and tell them, told you not to do it that way. No, we go over after they fall and brush them off and tell them they're going to be okay and help them dry up the tears and encourage them to do it again. But as soon as one of our team members does something wrong, we go zap them for it. You ever do that again, right, I'm going to fire you. But reality is, that's the only way they know how to do it because we never showed them a different way. So now rather they think, well, he's going to fire me if I do it that way again. I don't know how to do it, and they don't do it at all. Well, who really wins in that situation?
Right.
Nobody does. So one of the things I say a lot is if you coach more, you will certainly counsel less. And that falls right in line with that. And then the last thing, or we can talk about more, but before we get into hiring, is a lot of times as managers, we expect people to see things the way we see things. And so we imply that they know that. And we think, well, let's imply they know what to do there. And anything that's implied should always be explained. Nobody's going to interpret it the same way we interpret it, so we shouldn't imply that they do. We should explain it so that we are all on the same page and create that alignment so that we are all pushing in the same direction. Then when you do those things, now you know who can complement the team. You know where your strengths are, you know where your opportunities are, and now we can look for someone that can complement the team and fill those voids. And when you start filling those voids to where they just fit right in right from the beginning, it's like bringing in a different coach or bringing in a different quarterback or bringing in a different receiver, and it changes the entire team because they complemented the weakness of the team. And it's easy to see that in sports, not so easy to see that in business. You have to dial into it a little bit more, and you have to really connect with your people. But then you can hire the right people for the right roles to get that ball rolling. And it becomes fun.
You mentioned something in the coaching and counseling section that resonated with me, and I think it's maybe human nature. Sometimes we focus on the negative outcomes, right? You mentioned whether it's in athletics, we see it all the time. Even as a coach, you may berate someone for negativity, and whereas you were saying coaching, think about it as positive outcomes, opportunities, and it. While not exactly the same, as I was reading throughout the book, positivity was something that came through loud and clear, right? Just time and time again. And in the past couple of days, I found myself after reading, I found myself listening to people, and they would say something, and it had a little bit of a negative overtone. Again, they were not being negative people, but it was like, "Hey, I had this problem, this and that," as I was listening, I was like, well, what if we said it in a different way? What if we reframed that positively? And they were like, oh my gosh, you're right. And I was like, it wasn't a bad outcome. It's just an opportunity to do something differently. And it was one of the lessons. I don't think there was a title that said positivity, but it's something that came through in all of the chapters that you wrote. So imagine if the dealership's not performing as well, you're getting zeros. What would you tell leaders is the first step into recognizing there's a problem, but I need to give everybody an opportunity to solve that problem? So how does positivity come out for you?
Well, let's go back to the start of that where you kind of tied it to the coaching versus counseling. There is nothing about counseling that is proactive. That's always reactive to an action. Coaching is preventing the bad action, so it's proactive versus reactive. And if you can get ahead of it, then you can prevent from having to make that comeback in the game because you never fell behind in the beginning. And then the other is what we do here. It's the can-do attitude. It's what can we do? Don't focus on things you can't control. So as humans, we're wired to defend ourselves. We're wired to protect ourselves. So we look for all the dangers at first. Okay, well, that can't happen. And that's a learned behavior where you have to intentionally slow down, like you just said, and think, okay, how can I spin this positively? Because it's easy to restate those words in a way of what we can do about it, rather than it being the stopping point. Well, as soon as we hear, okay, well, I didn't even think about that. right. Yet you haven't, but over time, when you keep doing those things with them, they will. And then they come to you with not only the concern, but here's what I think I want to do about it, boss. And that's what you want, right? So it's that element of it, the can-do element, the positivity element, is a learned trait. That's something that we have to retrain our mind for. Take a deep breath, process it through, think about the end in mind, play it all the way forward. What can happen if we do this? Then, okay, well, maybe that's not the result we're looking for. What if it happens if we do this? Well, you'll find it. And sometimes it may happen differently than you think, and you got to punt and redo it again. Never be afraid to admit mistakes and just keep going forward. And when you do those things enough, people around you start doing those things, and they'll bring ideas to you that you never thought about, because they have more of the answers than we do, because they're at the ground level. They got more of the information than we do. We only got a few elements of it that we're trying to make a decision with. They have all of it, and they like being a part of it.
Yeah. You mentioned in your book having intentional regular meetings. And there was an example in there, and it relates back to can do versus can't do, where you sit down and you have everyone say, what do you feel like you're blocked on that you can't accomplish? And now let's reframe that. Can you share an example of that story and how those kind of meetings go in your dealership to get everyone primed for what are we going to do this week versus what can't we do? Because I think to your point, it's always a reframing. It's that positivity of, I've got these audacious goals. We're going to get to 40 mobile trucks. Oh my gosh, there's no way we can do that. So how do you get your teams prepped for doing amazing things?
Well, and I love that exercise. That's a fun exercise, and I don't do it often enough. But when I do it, it always tugs on my heartstrings, because I want them to give me the things that they struggled with either today or yesterday. I can't do this because of. And then you rephrase that for them, and it could be anything. It could be, and in that instance that you're talking about, I had an employee come to me, and at that point they was here for 3 or 4 years, and they had told me all along, millennials told me that I don't stay anywhere more than 5 years. Well, that's very common for millennials, so I got that. And she'd come to me and said, this job isn't fun anymore. And I said, why not? And she starts listing off things of what she couldn't do and what she was struggling with and whatever else. So the next morning, I knew we was having a meeting the next morning, so I'm just going to tie that into the agenda. And it was that aha moment to where everybody made a list of what they couldn't do because of, and you go around to the first couple and you help them re-change their way of thinking of what they could have done about it rather than what they couldn't do. Then the rest of the room just kind of takes over, and they're helping each other overcome obstacles. And an example would be, let's look at it from a service advisor in her situation. We was busy. We had a lot of things going on. We're growing. You can't grow every aspect of the business, as certain things grow faster than others. So at that time, we didn't have a whole lot of loaner cars for the demand that we had coming in. And she says, I can't offer my customers a loaner car. They want a loaner car. Well, no, what they want is transportation. So what you can tell them is, hey, we have a partnership with Enterprise across the street. I can certainly see if they have some cars available for you if you'd like. We're offering them the transportation that they need. We didn't tell them, no, I don't have a loaner car. We told them, here's what I can do for you. I can see if we can get one through Enterprise for you. Right. And here's their rate. And here's the rate that we have worked out with them. We got special rates worked out with them. And that can happen with anything. And truly, it happens in the sales department when you're overcoming obstacles to get the close. But outside of that, we don't think about it a whole lot elsewhere. And when we intentionally do that, just watching the power of the room when they kind of take over and they start helping each other, that's impactful. And then everybody gets the can-do attitude. Let's go conquer the world. And it's fun.
The can-do attitude seems to pervade throughout Bozard then as part of your culture. So then let's hit on one thing that you and I talked about. I brought up, well, how are you measuring success? What are your KPIs? And you said, I'm not thinking about KPIs, it's more responsibility. So when you're setting goals for millennials, heck, for folks like ourselves, you could be the top of the leadership chain, or you could be a brand new employee. How do you set a goal that oftentimes people think of as a number, but you described it to me as this is your responsibility.
So yes, I don't like to delve into just KPIs or this you're accountable for this or whatever. It's our responsibility to do a good job for our customers, and it's our responsibility to own the roles that we're in. And if we do those things, then the byproduct becomes the KPIs that continues to just skyrocket. And then celebrating those KPIs, celebrating the victories of what you truly achieved by doing the right thing, allows them to puts them in a position where they want to do it again. And I tell people all the time, if the audience gets anything out of this, take it and run with it. But people will repeat what they get recognized for. And so if we're recognizing our people for achieving things, they will go do it again. But not only that, when we recognize them in public, the person sitting next to them says, I want some of that. And they start pushing harder so they can get some of that as well. So I tell people all the time that people will repeat what they get recognized for, and there's three things that we should do for our people. The first and most important is recognize them, because when we recognize them, we're connecting with them, we're talking to them, we're finding out what their strengths are, we're learning their why, we're learning so many things. And then the second one is take that information that we learned about them by recognizing them and develop their areas of opportunity and help them strengthen their strengths already, help them strengthen them even more. And then the third one, correct them. So recognize, develop, and correct. And we should spend a lot less time correcting, but we got to make sure that we're not going to accept what we don't want from them. And if we don't tell them that we don't want it, they don't know that we don't want it. That's that implied piece. If it's implied, it should be expressed.
Right.
So if we recognize, we'll learn so much, take that, and it turns into development, and then build on those two. That becomes most of the time. And then when they do step out, correct them on it. You can't do that. That's not who we are. And then you're off to the races.
Cool. All right, let's end on hiring, and you used the phrase hiring to complement. So not hiring, you're not starting at employee 0. You're starting at employee 400 and something. So when you're thinking about 421, 422, what does hiring to complement mean, whether you're a small dealership or a larger one like yourselves?
Unfortunately, in most businesses, and it is in automotive as well, but it's across the board, is we throw people at problems. We say, okay, well, that's not getting done. Let me hire somebody to do it. And then that's not getting done. Let me hire somebody to do it. And over time, we got a lot of people hired that have tasks, not jobs. And then we're stepping on them because we can't necessarily catch them working all the time. Well, that's our fault because we hired them because a task wasn't getting done. We hired them for the task, rather than giving them a whole job description of what we should expect and what they would be responsible for. And if we develop that first, then we know what the voids are in our business. We know what we're trying to work on or improve or make an impact on. Now we can be very specific with that person looks like. What's the person that can do that job or learn to do that job or develop themselves into that role, rather than can you do this? Because if you can do this, then that's just the task, and they're not really feeling fulfilled, and they don't do it for very long. And next thing you know, you're looking for somebody else because they checked out and they're down the road doing a job for somebody else. So slow down when something's not being done and determine, is this a task, or have I grown to the point where I need to make it a job, or should have this already been a job, and we got to intel what we really want out of the person to do it. Because if we don't know what we want them to do, we can't tell them what good looks like. And everybody needs to know what good looks like. And when we build the job, we can easily express what good looks like. They know when they're doing a good job, and that gives us the opportunity to recognize.
You talked about customer retention and having kind of an 80%, 20%. So I'm curious, and we haven't talked about this. How about employee retention, right? Like retaining your talent is probably as important, if not more important, than sometimes your customers, because if you don't have great employees, how are you going to create great customer relationships? So how does Bozard do on employee retention? You're clearly growing.
Well, we touched a smidgen on millennials earlier, and we got Gen Zs, and we got baby boomers, and we got Xers out there. And every one of those generations look at things different. And what Zs and millennials need is to know what tomorrow looks like. They want to know that they have a path, whether it's development or whatever. And if you do those things, they become very loyal. and people talk about millennials don't want to do this and Z's don't want to do that. And a reference that I make is McDonald's hires millennials and Z's, and if you just go there, you're probably right. You probably can ensure what you're thinking. But Chick-fil-A hires those same people. They hire millennials and Z's, and they do a phenomenal job. So is it the people, or is it the structure behind the people, the processes? And I think it's both.
Right.
And when you focus on those things, and we have a lot of developmental programs here. We got Bozard University, we got a tech development program. You can start here at an entry level job, and next thing you know, be working at the sales desk. So when you develop people and you give them a path, they're always looking for what's next within you rather than looking outside of what's next. Mm-hmm. And that minimizes turnover. And then another element is when you're looking for the person that can complement the team because you have a role that needs to be filled rather than a task that needs to be done, then they feel fulfilled coming in, and so they automatically feel like they're part of the team. They was able to come in and make an impact, make a difference, and they don't want to go anywhere. And so, yes, we certainly buck the trend when it comes to the automotive industry, but we buck the trend when it comes to most industries. And we typically hover around the 5% turnover mark annually.
That's phenomenal, especially in, as we would say, these trying times. We see layoffs and everything else. Phenomenal that you're keeping that many people coming back and they want to stay part of the culture. So let's contextualize all of this. You talked about removing friction points. If you had to look forward and build the perfect automotive transaction, as it were, right? It could be online, it can be in-store, it could be hybrid, and I know every customer is different. What does the future of automotive retailing look like? If we look over the next 18 months, 3 years, does it change that much? Or does it continue down the things that we know are tried and true today? People keep coming into the dealership. What does removing friction and making the perfect transaction look like to you?
So we're not there yet. We're not there with mobile yet, and we're not there with a lot of things that we want to be. But you got to have a vision of where you're going to get there. And what I want is if Don, you was to look on my website and submit a lead on a used car that I have, rather than do everything in the world to try to get you to come into my store, text you, email you, call you, tell you this car's been this, it was pristine, it was taken care of, it's been garage kept, nobody's never done anything with it, is done. It's a great vehicle. We took it in 2 days ago. I see that you're 12 miles from here. It looks like I can be there in 18 minutes. How about I bring it out to you and show it to you? Then you can make a decision from there. Now, what I've just done is I stopped you from looking everywhere else for whoever else has that similar vehicle.
Right.
And you're waiting for me to come. Whether you got to jump in the shower or whatever it may be, I've made you captive. That's our opportunity. We're not going to spend any more time doing it. It's just changing how we go to market, how we look at what that lead looks like. And because if you submit a lead on a certain vehicle, you are in the market. There ain't no such thing as tire kickers. Everybody says they're just kicking. No, they came to a car dealer. Nobody wants to come to a car dealer. They came here because they're in the market. You can choose to say that they're kicking tires, but those are the ones that you're going to look on at a lost sale report and see that they bought somewhere else. There's opportunity there. But think about that. How much friction's in that when you land on the car and I'm on my way with it? Yeah. I'm showing up in your driveway. You take it for a drive, whatever it may be.
So
that's removing friction.
I think I just heard you say you were going to go from mobile service to being amazing at mobile sales. If
all the above.
Do both, right? So mobile everything. Basically meet the customer where their needs are. So when I think about that, it's like, how could you say no? You're going to bring me the car that I was interested in. You're going to bring it to me on my terms. We now have a captive audience. You've got a one-on-one relationship. It's at my home instead of the dealership. Sounds like win-win-win. Have you started to implement that?
Oh yeah, we're working on it.
Right.
We're not where we want to be yet.
Sure.
I don't know that we'll ever be where we want to be with anything, because there's always a better way to do things, no matter how good we are. And we just got to make sure that we tell ourselves all the time that just because we're good at something that we're not great, because good is the enemy of great, and we got to keep getting better.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to ask you a quick 5 questions, and then this is just for anybody who hasn't seen Ed yet on podcasts. Next time you do see him, maybe you can use one of these personal things to your advantage, but fast 5 here. Favorite food?
Steak.
Ooh, steak. All right, so we'll go get a steak next time I see you. Last movie you saw?
I can't answer that one because I don't typically watch movies.
Well, hey, there we go.
It might be Titanic when it was still in movie theater. I'm serious about that.
So Ed's busy, guys. Last book you read, or heck, in this case, last book you wrote, but last book you read.
The Unreasonable Hospitality. I read it for the second time a couple weeks ago.
Cool. Excellent book. Anybody who doesn't know that, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, highly recommended. And then who are you learning the most from right now? In your book, you mentioned Alan Mulally, CEO of Boeing and Ford, personal mentor. So who are you learning the most from right now?
I try to learn something from everybody.
I love it.
But who I'm the most connected with would be the ones around me. And Jeff King and I together, we don't go out to change the world, we go out to challenge the world.
Yeah. So Jeff and you are definitely creating an amazing dealership there. And then, I don't know, it sounds like you're traveling all over the place and what you and I were talking about. I don't know if you vacation, but your next vacation, where is that going to take you? Where do you want to go?
I love to travel international.
Yeah.
And I want to travel somewhere. One of my goals, one of my priorities that I set out this year and I haven't made it yet, is I need to travel to an international country that I have not yet been to. So
Is that
I
like
have been to Europe,
three countries left? Yeah.
So I've been to several,
Yeah.
but I got to find one, and I have taken 2 vacations so far this year because you play hard, you gotta. I mean, if you work hard, you gotta play hard.
Yeah.
But I haven't made it somewhere international that I haven't been yet.
Cool. I've got Ireland and Scotland on my bucket list, but there's so many places to see. Yeah, so very much same thing. All right. And then how can our listeners reach you after seeing this podcast? What's the best way to get in touch with Ed, both about your book, anything we've talked about today, or just future opportunities with you?
So I'm available most anywhere you look for me. I don't block anything, so I'm open on LinkedIn. Everything's there. My cell phone's on there if you look for it. I'm open on Facebook. My book's on Amazon. Any day now it should be on Audible. I'm easily reachable with a little bit of effort.
Did you narrate your book?
I did.
Awesome.
I had a tough time doing that at first. I said I need to hire the right voice.
Yeah.
But no, I got some encouragement on the other side that says you need to do it, and so I
Awesome.
stepped out there and did it.
I love it when authors read their own books, so looking forward to that. Again, Ed Roberts, CEO of Bozard Ford, author of Mile One, and so much appreciate you joining us today. Amazing conversation, inspiration for the months and years ahead. Thanks, Ed. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Don.
All right.